In this breakdown, we're going to talk about the application menu, starting with Search ACES Applications. This search form gives you the ability to find applications from a vehicle standpoint as opposed to coming from an item. So we start with a make, model, and year search, and you can also search by tags. You'll see at the top of this make window we have some favorite makes that we'll talk about in just a minute. But once we select some values and click search, we get our results. And we see year, make, model, part type, etc. If we need to filter the results, we can use the filter option down here to filter by a part type, for example, or something else more specific about the vehicle. And then our options, we can click on the part number to go look at that item specifically. We can edit the application, duplicate, copy, or move the application, as well as delete it if that's what we'd like to do. The next option, Mapping ACES Applications and ACES Catalog Health, we're going to save for another video. So we'll jump ahead to Application Resources. Application Resources, just like Product Resources, is where you define things that relate to multiple applications or kind of establish the catalog as a whole. And we start with ACES Mapping Profiles. As we go through the mapping process, we get to choose which fields we want to see on the screen. And the mapping profiles is where we define that. You can have as many different mapping profiles as you want. When you click the drop-down list, you'll see how many you have, or click Add to create a new one. If we do want to create a new mapping profile, we're prompted to provide a name, and then we can choose whether we want to look in a make, model, year order to start, or if we'd prefer a year, make, and model. Those options are required just to expedite the process and make it a little bit faster. We are going to eventually add some additional ways to look up vehicles, but at this point it does force either a make, model, year in some combination to start. From there, we can click our drop-down list and pick other attributes that we want to add. Once we click Add, we see it show up down here. I can drag these around in whatever order I want, although the order in Premiere is not as important as was in Legacy, because you can, as you go through the mapping process, you can choose whichever attribute you need at the time. But even though I've added it, it hasn't saved my record yet. So once I have it the way I want, just click Save again and go on from there. The next two options in the Application Resources menu are Favorite ACES Makes and Unwanted ACES Makes. These are kind of mirrors of each other. We'll start with Favorite ACES Makes. If you remember on the search form, it showed Ford, Volkswagen, and Volvo at the top of the search list. And that's what Favorite ACES Makes does. If you don't want to have to scroll down to a make that you're very commonly selecting, you are welcome to set that as a favorite, and then it'll come up at the top of the list. It will still be included further down if you need it, but it just prioritizes the ones that you want at the top. Unwanted ACES Makes is essentially a mirror of that. We choose makes that we do not want to see in our drop-down list at all. That doesn't mean they're not there for other reports if you do have something mapped. It just doesn't come up as a selection. So if I was to click Add and identify this make as an unwanted ACES make, when I go to my search page or my mapping page, I'm not going to see this as an option anymore. So if you're only mapping to the most common vehicle makes, perhaps you want to get rid of some of the other motive makes, you can flag some of those as unwanted ACES makes here. The next option in the Application Resources menu is the ACES Note Library. And the Note Library functions very similar to how it did in the Legacy system. We'll start by just a blank search to get some results and look at the columns. As you can see, we have an English text and Spanish text shown on this page. We do actually support the saving of a French value as well. However, in your ACES XML files, only the English text will be used unless you have a custom request. Other options on this page, we can see how many times that note is being used. Actions include editing the note. When we edit it, we can again see that there is a French text there. You can define a sequence value. If the order of notes is important to you, you can prioritize them using these sequences. And there's another option to suppress them in a PDF. Again, if you have a custom PDF with special needs, that is one of the functions people use, is keeping some of those notes out of the print version. There's also an option to replace a note if we have two notes that are very similar and we want to combine them to improve our consistency. We can use that replace function, and then we can also delete the note. Deleting this note will obviously remove it from all of those applications, but the applications will still persist. The last option in the Application Resources menu is Copy ACES applications. It's going to be a very handy tool if you need to change a part type or have a situation where you have a parent and child part number and you want to physically copy those applications. There's two sections, copy from and copy to. In both cases, you identify the item that you're going to be copying from or to. At the top, we identify we're going to copy these applications and leave them also with the parent number, or completely move them from the parent to the child. Optionally, we can target applications underneath that by targeting a specific part type or a specific position. If you leave these values blank, it will include all applications in this process. Within the copy to rules, again, we choose the item that we're going to be copying applications to, and we can redefine what the part type, position, or quantity is on this item. So I may have a part number that's my parent as a different part type than the child, and I can use this form to convert from one part type to another. I can also use it to convert within the same part. If I've identified the same number as my copy from as my copy to, that allows me to quickly change a part type if I've identified the wrong part type to start with, or I need to replicate fitment under another part type. If you do not choose any values down here, then whatever was on this source record will be used. The last option in the application menu is a submenu called Bulk Change Tools. This provides three ways to make rapid changes to your fitment data. The first, BCDB sourced changes, takes advantage of the change log that is documented in the BCDB every month. We review those changes as they're released, and some of them we deem reliably tracked enough that we can action those in your catalog, but we still want you to know what the changes are and make sure you confirm or agree with that change. So BCDB source changes, you'll see if we've identified changes, the version that they're found in, how many of those changes we found, and then you have the option to apply all of them or view the change details. I always suggest that you view the change details first. So as we drill into that, we can see in this case they're all engine-based changes. We list the previous ID and the suggested ID. You can see in most cases it's the same or a very similar engine-based definition that comes across. And then under related fitment records, if you have any records that use this previous ID, you would see that count here. You could drill into that and see what they are, or you could click apply and apply that specific change. If you agree with all of the changes that are in that BCDB change log, you can also use the apply all option on the previous page. The next bulk change option that is available are community sourced changes. These are changes that other users of Evokat have identified and have chosen to apply to their data. You can use the filter to find changes that may apply to what you see, but anytime you're resolving issues and you happen to see the same change again and again and would like to make that change on a wider range of vehicles, you're welcome to use this form. However, when you create these definitions, you do have to add the specific model ID or engine ID for it to work. It is intended for users that are understanding the BCDB, know how to do research, so it is purposefully kept a little bit more complicated than some other functions. The changes out here, you need to do research and make sure that it is a change that you want to apply. If you do see something you want to apply, you have the ability to stage the change, and the stage will break down the search and the change that will be made. It will identify who created it and when. If you have records that will be affected by this change, it will identify that down here. And you also have the option of applying this change to invalid configurations only. If you agree with all the changes on this page, you can click Apply Change, and whatever change is reflected up here will be applied to your data. But as it says at the bottom, there is no undo action, so be sure that this is a change that you want to make. The other option on this page is to report a change. Report sends us a notification saying that you believe that a change somebody else entered is not valid. For whatever reason, they may have put in the wrong ID, or it was too broad of a definition. If you have concern about it, please use that report function. That will fire off a message to us to review it and decide if that's something that should be kept in the system or not. The last option under bulk change tools is update from supplier. If you're in a situation where you're receiving files from a supplier, you can use this update process to replace the data from one file to the next. Just like the catalog builders, it will only replace data for parts that are in the file that is being loaded. So if they have dropped a part number that you still have in your system, the records in the system will not be changed. But you can configure this form in a couple of different ways. The file type of ACES 3X also applies to an ACES 4. Source file identifies the file you're going to load, and then there's two options. You can either choose no FLM, which would mean that you're not wanting to include any Ford, Lincoln, Mercury specific vehicles, or all makes. Most users will want to select the all make option here. And then you can identify whether you want to skip new items in the file or create new items. If you're getting data in from a supplier, I would suggest you initially run it as a skip new items, just to make sure that they're not including anything in the file that is not expected. But if you trust the file coming in, you can choose create new items, and it will automatically create anything new in that file in your system. If you're using create new items, then I also suggest you use the tag for a new item. Simply choose whichever tag you would like to have those new items assigned to, click upload, and it will load from there. Again, as part of this update process, it will remove any fitment records for parts that are found in that file, whereas other records in the system will persist. So if your supplier has dropped a part number, you need to manually make that change in your system. And again, there is no undo. So if you're loading this information, make sure it is what you want to have in your catalog. That covers the core functionality from the application menu. Please look for function-specific videos related to the mapping process and issue resolution if you have questions on those areas. And as always, if you have questions on anything you see, please reach out to us and we'll walk you through it. Thank you.